Two dusty guests came to the governor's office. They were both in the year of Wei Crown. Jade trays faced the wind, such as known and song, and first-class beauty. When the porter heard that he was visiting Mr. Xianxia, he didn't even ask his identity. He quickly led him into the official residence, led him to the other courtyard where Mr. Kui lived temporarily, and helped knock on the door. The porter respectfully left. The man who opened the door was the gentleman who came here to seek victory on behalf of Confucianism. He won the reputation of Hebelang when he was young and has always been regarded as the only candidate for the next mountain master of Guanhou Academy. When he saw the two young people, he was surprised and surprised. He looked at one of the young people leaning against the door and asked with a smile, "Baqiao, who is this friend around you?" The young man called Baqiao smiled and said, "This guy is Xianxia from Longwei County of the Daong dynasty. Brother Kui. You can call him Song Fang Da. This guy is no good at beauty and wine in his life, but he has a penchant for stone and inkstone. I heard that there are several old pits in the stream here, so I want to take a chance. He also has a distant relative who will accompany us this time. If it weren't for her, Song Fang and I wouldn't have delayed entering the town until now. We should have. She came 2 days ago. She didn't like dealing with people, so she went to the town by herself. Alas, it's a pity that birds are birds. On the way here, I heard that a prince of the Sui dynasty had a great chance to win a golden dragon carp in the future. She has great hope to walk out of the river and make my eyes red. Brother Kui, look, it's full of blood, isn't it?" The young man put his head out to the Confucian gentleman. The latter smiled and pushed his head away with his fingers, reminding him, "Liu Baqiao." Since he has delayed his journey, he hurried to get down to business. Though, what are you doing here? When has the acting style of Finley Garden become so delayed? The Chen son of Longwei County apologized and said with a bitter smile, "There was a conflict accident on the way here." Brother Baqiao heard the viscera and orifices of the sword room. He had to take the risk to move his life sword to the orifices of the Mingtang. If I hadn't done well, it would have become a burden and would never hurt Brother Baqiao. Liu Baqiao laughed heartily. "It's just a few sneaky wild cultivation. I was lucky to hurt my child by some crooked ways. Anyway, it's the soul of my sword that it's not worth mentioning. If I'm not in a hurry, my child will get them some clothes tombs, set up a tombstone, and write that they died under the sword of Liuba Bridge on a certain day, a certain year. When I become the first person in Kendo, I'll be wind in the future scenic spots, right?" The Confucian gentleman had known Xianxia, the genius of Finley Garden, for a long time. Knowing that he was born out of tune, he brought them into the yard. Liu Baqiao suddenly lowered his voice. "Brother Kui, give me a clue. That is this world about to collapse? Mr. Jian, who moved here in the Cliff Academy, really wants to act against the sky." The scholar surnamed Kui turned a deaf ear. Liu Baqiao smiled and pointed to Mr. Xianxia. "I already understand." The Confucian gentleman seemed careless and said, "Song Fang, I visited Mr. J at the school before. When Mr. J talked about self-cultivation, he felt that time waits for no man. Cultivate one's morality, govern the country, and level the world." The sage said from Kui stopped when he only talked about cultivating one's morality. At first, Chen Songfeng thought it was a polite greeting between scholars, but when he saw the other party's eyes, he was moved. Chen Songfeng immediately understood it and said with a fist, "Mr. Xianxia, come on, I single quotes LL find the distant cousin, and then ask Mr. Xianxia for advice on the strategy of governing the country." In Chen Songfeng's words, he intentionally or unintentionally skipped the link of unifying the family that only mentioned governing the country. Chen Songfeng hurried away. The scholar's surnamed Kui sighed and sat at the stone table in the yard with Liu Baqiao. Liu Baqiao crossed his legs and said bluntly, "This Chen Songfeng is smart. He's smart. He doesn't pay much attention to his appearance. Anyway, he sits down and talks nonsense with you. It's not too late to go. He's in such a hurry to ask for the leaves of Xian locust. I don't think it's necessary. Now, in addition to the Chen family in Longwei County, there are still several family names on the table in Dongbao Pingshu. It's difficult for those locust leaves to fall into his Chen Songfeng's pocket. The road still falls on the heads of the local laymen in the town. The Chen family in Dongbao Pingshu is respected by the Chen family in Longwei County, although it has been silent for a long time. It is only that the skinny camel is bigger than the horse, although its momentum is not strong. It is the Millennium Giant Valve that has produced a large number of heroes. Therefore, even the prosperous sect like Finley Garden, where Liu Baiqiao is located, cannot be underestimated. Therefore, even people like Liu Baiqiao are willing to be with it, which can be regarded as half a hero friend. The scholar asked curiously, "Are you here to find Master Ruan and ask him to help you forge a sword?" Liu Baiqiao hesitated. That it roughly means to do something for someone. If it is done, Finley Garden will come forward to intercede with Master Ruan and forge a sword for him. As for why Liu Baiqiao seems to be a little hard to tell. The scholar said again, "Do you know there are people from Jian Mountain? And they are the master and servant." Liu Baiqiao was stunned and said, "I haven't heard at all. Who is Jian Mountain?" Then the young Xianxia, who is famous for his domineering in the Wind and Thunder Garden, closed his eyes, folded his hands, read and prayed, "Don't be a national and city-conquering Fairy Su. Boy." I knelt down and begged that Fairy Su didn't come. Otherwise I would like to give a sword or not. Fairy Su looked at me, and I would be crisped. Where would I be willing to sacrifice a flying sword? The scholar was helpless. "Don't worry. It's not the Fairy Su you like. It's the white ape protecting the mountain. He escorts the baby granddaughter of Da Kui, the ancestor of Chen Yang sword in Jian Mountain. Lao Kui, you're really my lucky star. If it's not Fairy Su, everything will be fine." Liu Baiqiao immediately jumped around and left, afraid of his eye. "I'm afraid of an old beast. Everyone in Finley Garden can be afraid, but don't advise him on Jian Mountain." The scholar hesitated. Finley Garden and Jian Mountain were authentic kendo with the same root and origin. Why could they untie the noise? Liu Baiqiao restrained his joking look and said in a deep voice, "Kui Ming Huang, don't say half a word to people when you come to Finley Garden." The scholar sighed. Wind and Thunder Garden, Jian Mountain. The two sides, from the ancestor Xianxia to the newly introduced children, often don't need a word to disagree. As long as they meet, they will draw their swords and face each other directly. The official concierge and the old steward suddenly rushed to the gate of the hospital. Kui Ming Huang and Liu Baiqiao got up at the same time. The steward walked into the yard, saluted and said, "Mr. Dao Ui Kama just got a message that Zheng Yangshen shot a teenager named Liu Xiaonyang." Liu Baiqiao suddenly became angry. "Which Liu Xiaonyang?" The steward paid a lot of respect to Mr. Dao Ui. As for the unnamed child in front of him, the old man was not afraid and replied calmly, "Tell the child back that there is only one person in our town named Liu Xiaonyang." Liu Baiqiao's face changed sharply and said with a sneer, "What a Jian Mountain. It's too much to deceive." Kui Ming Huang looked at himself and asked, "Does Mr. Dao come forward?" The steward shook his head and said, "Not yet. I heard that the young man was taken to Master Ruan's sword shop. I estimated that even if he didn't die, there was only one breath left. Someone saw with his own eyes that the young man's chest was smashed by a fist. How could he survive?" Kui Ming Huang smiled. "Thank you for telling me about it." The old steward quickly waved his hand. Don't dare to be. The responsibility is." Nagging Mr. Dao Ui double quotes after the steward led the porter to leave together. Kui Ming Huang saw Liu Baiqiao sitting back on the stone bench and asked, "Are you coming for that young man?" Liu Baiqiao's face was gloomy and uncertain. "It's half thought it'll be a lot of trouble next." "Big trouble?" Kui Ming Huang asked. "It's not just about the gratitude and resentment between Finley Garden and Jian Mountain." Liu Baiqiao nodded. "For more than that." The scholar sat with his hands off and whispered, "The tree wants to be quiet. But the wind is not stopping. It seems that I should start to get back the square town GUI. Even if Mr. Dao Chen mistakenly thinks it is the fault of our Guanghu Academy, there is no way." Kui Ming Huang stood up. "I'll go to the school and go back." After he left the official residence in Fuli Street, he passed the 12-foot memorial archway, stopped and looked up at the plaque with the words, "Do your duty." In the sun, the reader stretched out his hand to cover his forehead. After a moment of hesitation, he turned and returned to the official office. On Fulu Street, a tall old man with white hair led a girl with a delicate appearance like a porcelain doll. Instead of entering the Liu family's house, he went to the Li family. Someone had been waiting at the door and welcomed them into the house. In the main hall where the plaque of manor hall was hung, a dignified old man stood up and came to the door to meet him. He hugged and said, "Li Hong has seen an ape." The old ape who moved the mountain in Jian mountain nodded freely to the owner of the Li family, loosened the little girl's hand, bowed his head, and said softly, "Miss, the old slave is waiting for you at the top of the mountain." The little girl sat on the threshold of the main hall, angry and silent. The master of the Li family whispered, "Don't worry. Sir Wei Li will send Miss Dao out of the town unharmed." The old ape said, "Please help take care of the young lady this time. Even if Xianxia owes you a favor, let me talk to the young lady." The old man immediately left the main hall and ordered everyone in the family not to get close to the manor hall. The old man also sat on the threshold and thought, "Miss, there are some things I shouldn't have told you, but it's so far that it's meaningless to hide them. The old slave told you most of the trip to the town was carefully planned by someone. The lady Su of Qingfeng City can't escape, but she may not be the most important person. The powerful thing about this pit is that even if the old slave notices it, she can't stop jumping. Miss, I don't know. The owner of the Sword Sutra was once a villain of Jian Dao who betrayed Jian Mountain. He created it himself, according to your grandfather. The most valuable thing about the Sword Sutra is that although the author of the book only touched the threshold of the Sword Fairy, the content of the Sword Sutra points directly to the road. Miss, what do you think? The ancestor of the Xi family who made friends with us in Jian Mountain and other horizons still give the Sword Sutra a comment on the word extremely high. Then the old man's tone was a little cold. When he was desperate, this swordsmanship genius who deceived his master and destroyed his ancestors took refuge in Finley Garden, our old enemy in Jian Mountain. Finley Garden did protect this man for half his life. He became a shrinking turtle for most of his life later. In order to confirm the sword scripture, he quietly left Finley Garden and looked for several great sword immortals who had proved the Tao, such as the father of the Xi family. Even if he despised his character, he didn't care about the sword the scriptures are really appreciated. The ancestors of the Xi family privately said that the sword scriptures integrate the two candle spirits of Jian Mountain and Finley Garden. Once one party is cultivated, the battle between the two countries will end. The old man murmured, "Therefore, if the old slave can get the Sword Sutra and give it to you for cultivation, it will be the best result." 10,000 steps back. Even if we don't get it in Jian Mountain can bear the chance of those young people, such as Xianxia Mountain in the old Dragon City. The only thing is that we can't give way. That is, the bastards in Finley Garden get the Sword Sutra hands. The old man's face was black and ferocious. "Miss, don't forget that in the deepest part of the Wind and Thunder Garden, on the sword testing ground, the ancestor of Jian Mountain is also the ancestor of you." At the time when Jian Mountain was the weakest, she resolutely challenged the owner of the Wind and Thunder Garden of that generation. As a result, her body was not returned to Jian Mountain for burial by the Wind and Thunder Garden gift, but let her body die exposed to the sun. Even in his head, there is a long sword of the Wind Thunder Park swordsman, which is deliberately watched and laughed at for 300 years. Even though Jian Mountain has recognized a large number of talents, it can't even pull out a sword of Finley Park. Generations of sword repair of Jian Mountain bear this great humiliation. If Jian Mountain doesn't destroy Finley Park, it will be the laughter of the whole Dongbao Pingshu. Why is it that in Jian Mountain, after every ancestor has achieved the respect of Sword Fairy, he is never willing to hold a celebration and tell the world? In fact, the little girl has long been familiar with these old events, and her ears are cocooned. However, when the relatives and elders talked about it before, they tried to mention the gratitude and resentment of the case in a light tone, far from being as angry and full of resentment as the moving ape. The little girl asked in a childish voice. Grandpa Babe, why don't you just kill the stubborn boy with one blow? Although he has broken meridians and broken breath, the sword scripture will naturally be smashed and broken, and the immortal can recover. But he's not afraid of 10,000, just in case. If someone saves him, and if someone gets the sword scripture, what should we do in Jian Mountain? The inheritance method of the Sword Sutra is extremely special and mysterious, which cannot be explained in words. It seems that it was inscribed on the wall by Liu's ancestors, or the trader of Jian Mountain left a sword with uncertain circulation, which is intended to be passed on from generation to generation. He has been waiting for the emergence of gifted descendants to control the sword, meaning containing the content of the Sword Sutra. So as long as the young man dies, his porcelain beer and family garden will be completely dead. The Sword Sutra that has never really appeared will disappear. The old man laughed and said, if the old slave kills the young man on the spot, he will be driven out of this small world in an instant. What will Miss do then? Do you want Miss to face the people in the Wind and Thunder Garden alone? Moreover, the martial arts here are forbidden. Master Ruin can forge a sword and kill people, but his ability to save people is really no good. Besides, can Che Jingchen do it? Absolutely not. Now he is a mad bodhisattva, Jian can't protect himself. Besides, he really annoys the old slave. He will show his real body at a big deal. The old slave wants to see if this world can support the old slave's real body. The old slave stood up and said with great momentum, Miss, the matter of the corridor bridge youth has been ignored. Don't let the old slave kill the people of Finley Garden and wait for you outside the door of the mountain top. If Che Jingchen knows each other, he will watch the fire from the bank. If he dares to intervene, the old slave will dare to hit him. Even if Master Ruin takes the shot, the old slave will fight one to the end, which is a worthwhile trip. The little girl thought for a moment and said with a brilliant smile, Grandpa White Ape, you go. Don't worry about me. The old man smiled and said, Miss, you don't need to worry about the old slave. A room in Jianpu by the river was filled with a strong smell of blood. Pots of blood were taken out, and then pots of water were brought back. An old man, who was almost caught by a girl in blue carrying a chicken, the shopkeeper of the young family medicine shop, sat on a small stool in front of the window, reached out to wash away the blood stains on his hands, sweat oozed from his forehead, looked up and shook his head. Master Ruin, the boy's injury is too serious. If it's outside the town, double quotes. Master Ruin with both hands around his arms said with a straight face, Stop talking nonsense. The old man had to smile bitterly. He did say a piece of nonsense. If he was outside the town, he didn't need to do it at all. Ruin Xiu, a girl in blue, stared at the lotus leaf on the forehead of the young man in the sickbed. It was already dark and dull. The green was still green, but there was no green, meaning that she suddenly turned her head and asked angrily, Didn't it say that Champing and took out his lotus leaf? Liu Xianxia could have half the vitality. The old shopkeeper of the young shop sighed. If the owner of the lotus leaf himself is hit hard and then bears the ancestral shadow of the lotus leaf, of course, there is a 50% chance of life saving. But it's another matter to use it to give others a blessing. Ruin Shinu shouted. Young, then why did you talk nonsense and say there is 50% hope? Why didn't you say it earlier? The old man was sad and extremely wronged. If I didn't say that at that time, I'm afraid the boy didn't die. I'd have been killed by you. Ruin Shuqi turned pale and was about to swear. The man said in a deep voice, Shuxiu, don't be rude to shopkeeper Yang. Ruin Xiu clenched her teeth and remained silent. After a moment of silence, the man glanced at the old shopkeeper, who was numb and didn't move. Without a reason, he began to curse. Shopkeeper Yang, you're like a fucking wooden pestle here, killing yourself. When he met such a father and daughter, the old man really wanted to cry without tears. The key was that he didn't dare to show any dissatisfaction. He had to harden his hand and continue to be a living horse doctor. From the beginning to the end, the straw sandal boy didn't shout or cry. He just carried water out and came in again and again, and replaced pots of blood with pots of water. Another quarter of an hour later, The shopkeeper of the medicine shop was also extremely agitated. He looked down at the basin of water, slapped it in the water and splashed countless splashes. Then he looked up and said to Master Ruin with great grief and anger, "Master Ruin, you just stabbed me with a sword. I'm just a medicine seller, not a miracle doctor who comes back from death." The blacksmith frowned little by little. The old man immediately shrunk his neck. The boy finally said, "Shopkeeper Yang, try again." After the old man turned his head and looked at the boy's eyes were clean and slightly accentuated. "Try again." The old man vomited out a mouthful of turbid cha. He couldn't bear to say, "My child, I really can't do anything." The boy struggled to squeeze out a smile. "Shopkeeper Yang, please." The old man was tired and shook his head. The last hope in the eyes of the straw sandal boy disappeared. He squatted down, put down the basin, sat by the bed, held the cool hand of the tall boy, squeezed out a smile more ugly than bitter, and whispered, "Oh, come back." The boy got up and left the house, went to the threshold, suddenly turned around, bowed to the ruined family's father and daughter and the old shopkeeper, and thanked the three people who had been busy until now. The boy crossed the threshold. The sun was dazzling. After a slight pause, the boy strode forward. "God doesn't give justice, that it's okay. I'll ask for it myself, that I can ask for as much as I can." Not long after the straw sandal boy left the house, the girl in green was about to follow up as soon as she stamped her foot. She was shouted by the middle-aged man who changed from Master Ruin to Master Ruin, and said in a straight face, "Xianxia, if you get involved now, you will only help and harm Champignon. Then there will be no more disaster." Ruin Xiu didn't turn around, but suddenly turned her head. The black and bright ponytail threw a beautiful arc in the air. The girl's eyes were sharp and her tone was almost harsh. "Dad, you didn't get involved in Liu Xiaonyang's affairs. What's the result?" The man tried to stop talking. Finally, he kept his secret and said in a deep voice, "Believe that. Now you." The greatest help to the boy is to try to tell him some secrets and rules of the small cave, and ask him to try to do things within the framework. It's the same if you can occupy enough. Ruin Xiu hesitated. The man waved and patiently told, "You're my Ruin Kaiyong's daughter." The boy in the mud bottle lane. No matter how big the pebble he threw into the pond, the splash is limited, and he won't disturb the old bastard at the bottom of the water. This means that everything can be handled. But you Ruin Xiu are different. Remember, when you have calmness in major events, you need to read more and don't listen. You can't even compare with a bad alley boy in fight. You're still a man of practice. In fact, as soon as the man said the last sentence, he regretted it. There was no way. When he came to his daughter's side, the man couldn't help saying that he would tear down the stage. Fortunately, this time, the girl didn't feel how aggrieved. She ran out of the house quickly and left the man in a complicated mood. The man, whose real name was Ruin Qian, took a stool and sat down, holding the tall boy's wrist. He had a tangled pulse, which was terrible. The man who was in a bad mood became more and more gloomy and complained, "It's true that Xianxia is so speculative. Even if Jianyang Mountain can deport him according to the rules, it's better or worse to teach him a lesson. If he can't be killed, what's the problem? Otherwise, there will be a continuous influx of new people in the world, and there will be more fish and dragons mixed, and there will be no chaos. Why? I think I'll leave office in a few days anyway, and I'll stay if it's a big deal. Give me a shabby stall." What about the responsibilities of a good scholar? The poor old doctor sits aside and looks at his nose and heart. He never interrupts to avoid causing trouble. The old man only dares to keep gossiping in his heart. It's said that there is calm in every major event. After complaining, Ruin Tian finally sighed. "You Xianxia can't help being so tied up. You can ignore the words in front of you. Don't miss it." In fact, the old shopkeeper of the young family's shop has been listening. After hearing the speech, he immediately admires him. He thinks he is worthy of being the next saint in the cave. This cheat can stop the flaying sword. Ruin Tian suddenly looked at the old man and asked, "I only heard that the married girl spilled water before anyone got married." She had turned her elbow out, The old man really held back for a long time. He couldn't help but want to say a few words of conscience. Otherwise, he would be sorry for his iron and clan character. So he dared to say, Master Ruan, is it because of his old age and dizzy eyes? I always feel that the young man doesn't seem to like your Xianxia much. Ruan Qiong looked at the old man with pity and nailed the railway. Don't doubt, you're old-eyed. The old man also looked at the man with a pitiful look, till were too speechless. On the other side of the well, Ruanxiu caught up with Chen Ping'an and didn't speak. It seemed that she didn't know how to speak. Chen Ping'an smiled at her. I remember the first time I met her at Qingyu Bay. I thought she was dumb or couldn't speak the dialect of the town. Now I know that she just doesn't like to talk. She followed the footsteps of the straw sandal boy and walked to the corridor bridge. The girl in blue finally summoned up the courage and said, Chen Ping'an, my name is Ruanxiu and my father's name is Ruan Qiong. I've been forging swords with my father since I was a child. When I came to your town this time, my father said that it was due to the trust of the songmen and the soil and water here are most suitable for forging sword furnaces. So I came here to wade in the muddy water. In fact, I know in my heart that my father wanted to find a chance for me. My father wanted to die for faith. Just like your friend Liu Xianxia. My father actually wants to accept this disciple. You may not know that if my father chooses to establish a sect here in the future, it will be very important for him to be the first disciple of the mountain. So he is not desperate. Don't blame him. Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, I don't blame your father. Speaking of this, the straw sandal boy paused, raised the back of his hand and wiped his chin. He said bitterly, I know I shouldn't blame others, but I'm very angry. Why didn't your father accept Liu Xianxia as an apprentice earlier? Why didn't anyone stop Liu Xianxia when something happened? Even if I know it's wrong, I'm still very angry. Ruanxiu nodded. This is human nature. Chen Ping'an didn't want to spend more here. He asked, Miss Ruan, what can I do for you? Ruanxiu asked cautiously. Aren't you going to avenge the people of Jian Mountain now? Chen Ping'an did not speak. Neither denied nor admitted. The girl was no good at words, so she just said what she thought. Don't be so reckless. The Xianxia Mountain is a famous sect in Dongbao Pingshi. In fact, the identity of the old ape is the same as that of the ancestor of Jian Mountain. Even if the old ape can't use magic here, it's easy to deal with you. After he seriously injured Liu Xianxia, Mr. Dao Che will punish him, so at least you don't have to worry about it. He will be treated as anything didn't happen. Chen Ping'an interrupted the girl's words and said, Miss Ruan, your so-called punishment means that the murderer will be driven out of the town. Ruanxiu was dumb. Chen Ping'an smiled and comforted the girl in turn. Her eyes were sincere and clear as a stream. Miss Ruan, I appreciate your kindness. Of course I won't rush up foolishly and fight with that kind of a mortal directly. Ruanxiu was relieved and habitually patted her chest. Perhaps she felt that her actions were childish and not elegant enough. She didn't look like a lady of the family. The girl with ponytail smiled a little embarrassed. Chen Ping'an also laughed and said, Last time I only gave you 3 fish. I was too stingy. Ruanxiu was a little shy and asked anxiously, Your left hand? Chen Ping'an raised his tightly wrapped left hand. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Ruanxiu sorted out his thoughts and said slowly, Chen Ping'an, don't be impulsive. Now Mr. Dao Chen is in a difficult situation. Moreover, when Mr. Dao Chen and my father hand over, it is very likely that the town will usher in an earth-shaking new situation. That it's hard to say whether it's good or bad. So it's easy to be quiet, but not easy to move. Chen Ping'an nodded and said, Okay. Ruanxiu was inexplicably worried that in the final analysis, she was very anxious. According to her temperament, she should have killed the old ape in Xianxia at the moment, but now she has to work hard to persuade the youth not to take risks, which is against her heart. But the problem is that, as she said, the general trend is indeed easy to be quiet and not easy to move, which is also her intuition. She Ruanxiu rashly went to someone to ask for a statement, even if she caused a lot of trouble. Her father certainly wouldn't care, and most of them could hold her down. But in front of Chen Ping'an, He can only be considered about life and death. Chen Ping'an and Ruan Xiu left and ran to the corridor bridge alone. Don't see a girl. See a girl again. On the stone steps at the south end of the corridor bridge, there sat a girl with sword stacked, with a solemn face. She was wearing a dark green robe. Her eyebrows were long and narrow. Her lips were tight, and beside her were two beautifully woven gold silk embroidered bags. Chen Ping'an quickly ran to the corridor bridge, though just under the steps. The girl Ning Yao threw down the 2 bags of copper money and said calmly, "Return it to you." Chen Ping'an stood under the steps and caught 2 bags of money with both hands. He didn't know what to say for a moment. Ning Yao said with a straight face, "It was agreed to ensure the safety of Liu Xianxia. No, I didn't do it. I'm Ning Yao. I'm sorry for Chen Ping'an and Liu Xianxia." The girl knows that in this small town, her body and physique are still ordinary teenagers, though no one can save her chest when she is punched by the immortal family. Moreover, if Liu Xianxia is saved, even if there is only a glimmer of life, with Chen Ping'an as bad character, I'm afraid he will be beheaded if he stays at the blacksmith shop, and he will never leave without authorization. Chen Ping'an went up the steps, squatted near her, handed back the 2 bags of money to the girl, and said softly, "Miss Ning, keep the money. Take all the bags hidden in my house in my bottle lane, and I don't need them anymore. If you want to be able in the future, you can help spend money to hire everyone to look after the houses of Liu Xianxia and me." The girl didn't take the money back and smiled angrily. "Do you want to help you paste Spring Festival couplets and dog out every Spring Festival?" Chen Ping'an said seriously, "If you can, it's the best." The girl was almost angry and scolded. "It's amazing to be beaten in the face by Castail when I was a child. You can do stupid things honestly. I'm so angry. In short, don't worry about this matter. Chen Ping'an, do you think you can deal with a mountain-moving ape in Zhenyang Mountain with your little 3-legged kung fu? Liu Xianxia's broken house will be managed by yourself in the future. The dog out of your Spring Festival couplers will go and buy them yourself. I'd rather Yao doesn't serve." Chen Ping'an looked at the girl and said, "Miss Ning, although I haven't known you for a long time, I'm sure of one thing. If you have the confidence to avenge Liu Xianxia, you will never give me back 2 bags of money. At least not at this time." Chen Ping'an put the money on the steps between them. "Miss Ning, what time is it now? Do you think I'm still in the mood to say a polite word to you? You and me and Liu Xianxia just do a business deal. But they don't really hurt us, though they just encounter such natural and man-made disasters. No one can imagine that you can lose your life. Believe me, it's not just me. Chen Ping'an, who doesn't want to see this Liu Xianxia is a fool. I don't want to. If he can talk, he will only talk about men. Don't worry about women. Double quotes. The boy suddenly grinned and said, "Of course I dare not say that to Miss Ning." Ning Yao put his hands on the white scabbard sword and narrowed his eyes. "I only said half of what I said before, and guilt is half. Since I ran away from home, I've never walked around the world when I met a barrier." The girl put out her thumb and pointed to her heart. "Here too." Chen Ping'an thought, "Miss Ning, before you do something, can you let me find 3 people? Then we'll do our own things." Ning Yao asked, "How long will it take?" Chen Ping'an said without hesitation, "Half a day at most." Ning Yao asked, "Who are the other 2 besides Che Jingchen?" Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, "Don't ask, Miss Ning." Ning Yao frowned and said, "The Kill Affairs Supervision Office can manage this. Do you really think it's a small matter of sneaking around and fighting in the street?" When Chen Ping'an was about to stand up, Ning Yao said in a deep voice, "Take the money." Chen Ping'an had to put it away first. "Chen Ping'an, wait. Turn around first." After asking Chen Ping'an to turn around, Ning Yao suddenly bent down, lifted his robe, took down a simple short knife tied to his lower leg, stood up and handed it to the boy in a very solemn tone. "This is a unique skirt-pressing knife in our hometown, which every woman will have. If you are in a hurry, you should act accordingly. I don't pay attention to local customs. But don't forget, this knife is lent to you, isn't it for you?" Chen Ping'an was a little confused. Could he stretch out a hand to pick up the short knife? The girl said angrily, "Use your hands." How about some etiquette? The boy quickly raised his other hand, but he was still confused. Ning Yao has no good airway. Do you think you can kill the mountain-moving ape with only a few pieces of broken porcelain? Jian is just a role that hasn't gone far on the road of cultivation. What's more, the old animal in Jian Mountain has a natural vision, that it's the most rough skin and thick flesh, let alone porcelain. It's an ordinary immortal weapon. It can't hurt the old animal at all. What's the point of killing it and making 1 or 2 scars? It's useless. The boy who took the knife with both hands and didn't know how to place it looked strange at the moment. Ning Yao stared and said, "We're going to cut people with knives. Don't burst out a few rude words." Chen Ping'an was speechless. Somehow, the boy sat back, sat on the steps and looked up at the southern sky. The girl stood beside the boy. Chen Ping'an advised for the last time, "It will really die." The girl put her hands around her chest. She wore a sword on one side and a knife on the other side. Her face was indifferent. "I've seen more dead people than you've seen living people." Then she deliberately said in a casual tone, "Let's go pressing knife. You can tie it to your arm and hide it in your sleeve." Chen Ping'an nodded and said, "Okay." Chen Ping'an patted his knee hard, stood up and suddenly said, "I'm glad to know you." The girl suddenly turned around and walked in the corridor bridge first. A heroic and moving girl. A long sword with snow-white scabbard and a narrow knife with light green scabbard. Her figure at this time, it's one of the most beautiful pictures the teenager has ever seen in his life. At this moment, the teenager felt that even if he could get out of the town, he would not see a more exciting scene than this. "I won't lose my life." Therefore, because of what Dao Li said, he became a young man who cherished his life and was afraid of death. As before, he was not afraid of death at all. Die or die.